Hello mixtresses and mixters. This is Mixtressrae. You're watching Mixtress video. So I decided what better way to start. I really think I want to dive into my decks, shop my own shelves, as Anna, Astral Lady Tarot, says. I want to really dive deeper into the symbolism of the tarot decks that I have. And so I want to start a series where I go through each and every deck in my collection. I mean, that's a lofty, like I have like 28 decks, I think. And, you know, like a lot of tarot people in a post, what do people call it? Late stages capitalism? Is that what we're in? There's a lot of buying things happening in most of our lives. So, I'm always getting new decks. That was the point of that sentence. So, as I'm sure you can see, this is probably an obnoxiously long video, because at first I was thinking, well, it might be more digestible if I do this in like as a series. Like this would be Marigold Tarot Part 1 Major Arcana or something, and maybe I'll end up doing that. Like, you from the future, you know what I did because of the title of the video and how long it is. But the way that I kind of operate, I'm going to want to do this all at once. So the way that I'm intending to do it, and I'm sure that it will change as I actually start doing it and see how it goes, I want to use the guidebook, or in cases where a tarot deck does not have a guidebook, I will just read the cards intuitively based on the symbolism. I want to go through and kind of talk about how I feel about the symbolism, and then read the guidebook pieces that are available and kind of analyze, just analyze tarot decks, dive deeper into the symbolism. And despite the fact that, as many of you that have hung out on my channel before know, I call the Marigold Tarot my soul deck, despite that fact, there's some symbolism in this deck that is not readily accessible to me. And last night I was thinking about doing this series as I was falling asleep, and there were some cards in this deck that I couldn't bring to mind. So even though I call this my soul deck and I use this deck all the time, there were certain cards in this deck that I couldn't even recall. So yeah, we're just going to dive deeper. That's what we're doing here. And we're going to burn some incense. I found my Song of India. I thought I was out, but I've forgotten that I hung it on the wall for some reason, which means that it wasn't in the normal places where my incense is. There's a tarot cliche that I should have added. Incense. I burn so much incense all the time. Okay. Here's my lighter. Okay, here we go. I just discovered this whole burning your incense in a box situation, so you don't have to deal with ashes all over your tarot cloths and stuff all the time. It's great. Beautiful. I'm like an adult incense burner now. Incense user. Only been burning incense since I was I don't know, 14 years old. And I am now 38. Okay, let's go. So the thing that's really cool about Marigold Tarot, I might have to zoom out a little bit actually, just to get all of. So if you ever do end up purchasing Marigold Tarot for yourself, you will have a PDF of this entire guidebook, but you can also buy the guidebook separately, and because this deck is so important to me, I did do that. So the really cool thing about this particular guidebook is that it is the Marigold Tarot, a guide to the symbolism by Amrit Brar. So she actually does go into the symbolism, you know, every single little aspect of it as well. And so we're gonna get there. She goes into how she created the borders on the cards, all of that stuff. So we're gonna go for it. I don't know if it's gonna be this thorough where I end up like reading the entire fucking guidebook to you guys, but it might be. It just depends on, I'm just gonna go with the flow on how I feel like doing this in the moment. And obviously you're encouraged to move on if this isn't your thing, or skip around. Okay. Marigolds are gainda. I'm probably pronouncing things wrong, and I will just try. And yeah, are commonly seen throughout celebrations and auspicious occasions in an individual's life. They are worn as garlands, scattered freely, grown in abundance, and are featured prominently at festivals and weddings. Okay, so I kind of skipped over. This book is a guide to the symbolism of the Marigold Tarot. Sorry, this is like, there's a lot of glare happening here. You know what? I can actually prevent that because I have, hold please while I grab it. I have the more recent edition of this guidebook that was put out. Henri Brar so kindly gifted it to me. And it actually has more matte pages, so I bet that it will show up better. It's the same content, I bet it will show up better on screen. Yeah, it kind of does. Okay. This book is a guide to the symbolism of the Marigold Tarot. It is not a manual on how to use the deck. While much of the artwork is constructed with the Rider-Waite-Smith value system in mind, some of the icons used may be new to individuals who are not familiar with Punjabi and Sikh Punjabi culture. The Punjab region spans between the countries of India and Pakistan, and this deck draws some reference from the area that is now known as the Indian state of Punjab. That being said, this deck also utilizes Roman numerals for the majors, as seen in the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith deck, instead of Gurmukhi numerals specific to Punjabi, and also employs a number of images and references that are more relevant to the artist's day-to-day life. This is an acknowledgement of the Marigold Tarot existing at a kind of crossroads. The symbology of the deck, interwoven and mixed with Rider-Waite-Smith icons, archetypes, and templates. It is recommended that this book be used in conjunction with guides to the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith tarot and tarot reading guides for those who are new to the medium. So what I really appreciate about this deck in particular and the guidebook is that it is specifically for the symbolism in this deck. So this is gonna, like, not a lot of tarot deck guidebooks will even refer to the imagery, you know what I mean? Which bugs me, but we'll get there. So in the back, you got a list of references, which is great. So if you end up with this deck as like your first deck or something, and you do need sort of a more traditional guide to tarot, there are resources in the back. Okay, so we talk about the symbolism of the marigolds, which is the back of the card back. Are commonly seen throughout celebrations and auspicious occasions in an individual's life. They are worn as garlands, scattered freely, grown in abundance, and are featured prominently at festivals and weddings. Sorry guys, I'm like a little excited, so I'm like, my reading is not the best. With the advent of photography, it is not uncommon to see marigold garlands hung around photographs of the deceased or placed upon bodies prior to cremation. It is a flower that finds itself entwined in the journey of life and death for many. Then we have the explanation for the borders. Like, how cool is this? Like, of course, this is like a graphic artist that's explaining all of her detailed, talk about internal consistency. Like, I'm always like whining about if a deck doesn't have internal consistency. This one has it in spades. The same sentiment is communicated via the cards. The marigold flowers persist on the back of each major and minor arcana card, balanced in the event of a straightforward reading or a reversal. The flower is also displayed in the framing of the cards. In the instances where it is removed in favor of displaying the major arcana cards, so like the Fool up in the little circle, all the major arcana cards will have the Roman numeral up at the top, and all the minor arcana cards will have the marigold at the top. Though there are a number of recurring symbols throughout the deck and its artwork, the Marigold is the only icon that is never absent. It is the frame of reference from which all possibilities are taken. Ooh, doesn't that just give you goosebumps? Gotha and gold. Sorry, the whole page is not in here. Maybe if I hold it down a little bit. There we go. The borders of the cards are inspired by Gotha embroidery, an embellishment found on many types of South Asian clothing and widely applied to hems and sleeves. Gotha pati quite literally means a strip of Gotha, or a length of Gotha. Traditionally, these embellishments were embroidered with threads made of various metals, gold among them. Gold is the only color used in the deck alongside the black and white artwork. This references the dichotomies present in this metal, holiness versus wealth. So this is just explaining just the general border structure in the cards. Teeth and bone. Much of the clothing, cultural and religious references in this deck are particular to the cultures of the Sikhs and of Punjab. As per Sikh scripture, there is no promise of an afterlife in a heaven or hell. Sikhs traditionally cremate their dead, perceiving the body as empty upon expiry. The union between the body and soul has broken, and the physical form is now merely a shell in which a person once resided. The many skeletal figures throughout this deck do not directly imply darkness or an afterlife. They are, after all, the very same bones that reside alongside flesh, sinew, and viscera. It is an acknowledgement of the fact that enlightenment is within the reach of living flesh. Divinity exists inside of us and others in perpetuity, should we acknowledge it. There is no need to fear teeth and bone when it is stripped of the pulp that makes up a human body. It has only ever been human and nothing more. Those same skeletons wander and wonder and love and grieve. While the deck does draw influence from particular cultural practices surrounding the Sikh faith, Sikhi is a religion, does not hold with premonitions of fortune-telling. The use, premonitions or fortune-telling, sorry guys, this is like the worst series ever already. The use of poetry, allegory, and storytelling may be widespread, but it is a faith that demands a presence of conscience that focuses on the now. This deck is a tool that can be used both in the fashion of traditional tarot and as a means of meditating on questions concerning the present. So already acknowledging that, we're not going to be telling fortunes here, which is cool. This deck is very much a what is happening right now, what is my fucking truth right now kind of deck. So then we have an explanation of the major arcana in general, and then we get into the cards. We also will have other symbolism discussions as we get to certain points. I think it's in the back, isn't it? Yeah, there's some like special discussions in the back of the death card, so we will be going to this once we get to the death card. In fact, let's put the bookmarker right there. And then we'll be talking about the celestial siblings, so the star, moon, and sun. And then other symbolism, as we probably will need to go into that now, actually. Is that the first one? Yeah, after celestial siblings, okay. One of the Punjabi words for skeleton, pinjara/pinjar, can also mean cage or cell. This is thought to be in reference to the ribs, which have a cage-like appearance, much like the English term rib cage, and is also used when referring to the skeleton or bones of a structure or building. As mentioned previously, Sikhs traditionally cremate their dead. While this is not the only permissible means of enacting funeral rites, it is the most widespread. The cage, after all, operational, lively, and mobile, whether just through breathing or a heartbeat. Some portion is mobile, while the soul resides in it. It is the absence of this soul that renders these same bones into something frightening and static. When considering traditional perspectives, the only opportunity most individuals would get to witness a skeleton stripped bare of flesh, partial or otherwise, would be in the process of a cremation ceremony, outdoors on a wood pyre. Despite the cages in motion around us every day, many visibly recoil from the same grinning skeletons that we will leave behind. Not because the body is frightening, but because the implication of our own mortality is frightening. You are a structure built on a frame of bone, a divine architecture made flesh. Let's say that again. You are a structure built on a frame of bone, a divine architecture made flesh. The flesh. What a great transition. Like, this is just the best guidebook ever. Oh my god. Rings is the only suit that features flesh not rendered to bone, as seen in the hands from the Ace of Rings to the Ten of Rings. Due to the association of pentacles, discs, rings with material and physical matters, the presence of the hands and arms was intended to reinforce the idea of earthly concerns, the things we quite physically and literally interact with on this plane. Our relationships to finances, wealth, prosperity, and the home are all things we navigate while we inhabit our bodies. But as the saying goes, you can't take it with you. This is doubly enforced by using rings instead of pentacles or discs in order to communicate the very earthly nature of the adornment of precious metals, in this case gold, as per the deck's namesake. The flesh remains rooted where the mind cannot, tethered by gravity and circumstance, responsibility and law, external forces and interpersonal relationships. Given that the deck explores contemplation and the act of expanding one's mental horizons, it was important to include a reminder that we are only able to do so while we still breathe. All objects in the flesh do, after all, wither and decay. So this is more just like as an introduction to the ring suit, but that's fine. We did it here. This is like symbolism that occurs throughout the deck, which is the circle. Circles play an important role in the iconography of this deck, whether they are represented by halos, jewelry, weapons, wheels, suns, or moons. While it most obviously ties into the suit of rings, circles are illustrated throughout every suit and are also heavily featured within the major arcana. This is in part due to their strong connection to religious and spiritual iconography, but also a direct reference to the principle of a circle having no beginning or end, much like the infinite nature of the divine. The deck displays the cyclical relationship between the living and the dead. The death of ideas, feelings, goals, and relationships are often just springboards from which one makes room for new life in those respective spaces. There is a continuity to all things, even if the outcomes are not what we expect or find pleasant. The marigold flower itself is also round in shape, appearing circular when observed from overhead, a sacred spiraling geometry inward and outward. Then we have, we'll come to this when we get to the Lovers card, or when we get to the Devil card, actually. We'll come to that, hopefully, if I remember. The Tether. So this is interesting. This is about, like, some cards, like you will see it's a person floating in space in the major arcana particularly, but like for example the Fool is on ground, on solid ground. The Magician is in space. So this is about like when she chooses to have someone not on ground. In the major arcana, there are multiple cards wherein there may be no obvious horizon or grounding line between the feet of characters, beneath the feet of characters. This leaves them floating in space, or in the case of cards like Justice, so transparent that the night sky is visible through them. This is intended to reinforce the concept that some matters are not necessarily of the earth, that celestial perspectives may require occasionally relinquishing our earthly tether in order to take on new approaches in our thinking. While the tether is deeply necessary in entrenching us in this world, one has to be able to look past it on occasion, consider a multitude of outcomes and futures, and disregard it long enough to experiment with unlikely and impossible thoughts, to be playful, to be imaginative, to lose oneself in contemplation. So this is an example of the High Priestess card, by the way. What is logical may not always sustain the human soul, but being too flighty might render one unable to cope with the world altogether. Tethered and untethered characters litter this deck in an attempt to balance the need for freedom and duty, fantasy and reality. And then we get back to the references. So, the way that I think I'm going to do this, again, this is a work in progress. This is my first time doing this series. I don't even know what I'm going to call it yet. Is that I'm going to go through each card, kind of like look at it, see what I remember about the symbolism, see what's personal symbolism I have to attach to it, and then read what's in the book. So let's focus back down in, shall we? Do we want to take away, because let's do that. We'll bring them back when it's time. Take away the minor arcana. Of course, you can still kind of see them up there, but they're very bleached out by the sun. I wonder if I did this trick the other day. I don't know about that. I don't know about that. Is that going to... I guess it's kind of picking up more light as you get close to it. Is it? Kind of? Yes? Sorry about the lighting, guys. Okay. So what I remember particularly, I wonder if I can somehow get a light over here. That would be cool. I do not have that ability at the moment. Okay, well, sorry. Okay. It is what it is. Alright, so I don't have particular, like... Maybe I'll just hold the cards at weirdo angles so you can kind of see it. So obviously what we're seeing, or I'm trying not to say obviously so much because I'm always saying obviously when it's not really what I mean. So what we're seeing here is we are seeing that circle. So that sort of like idea of divinity. So being that this is the Fool, that automatically takes me to the idea that the divinity is the divinity is within us all, right? So let's see what the guidebook says. Key symbols. Okay, just to show you like what she does with each card. She will have at the top the key symbols to look for inside the card. She'll have a description of the card, and then she does have like keywords and stuff. So it's not like that is completely absent from this guidebook, even though this guidebook is more intended to be a description of this book specifically and not tarot in general. Okay, so key symbols. Tumbi, sun, and pomegranate tree. The Fool is shown wearing a dastar turban, tied in a fashion traditionally referred to as a turla, but it does not halo his entire head as is proper, implying carelessness. I mean, to me, it looks like it's around his whole head, but I don't know what I'm looking for. So I guess that's supposed to look sloppy. That's just my ignorance, not... Okay, refocus. Okay, I think it did. He holds a tumbi, a one-stringed instrument, commonly found in Punjabi folk music. The pomegranates represent multiple avenues and outcomes, as plentiful as their seeds. It doesn't even register to me, like when I look at this card, that he's holding an instrument. Which just goes to show, like, I am a person that, like, I will focus on like one tiny detail and not necessarily see everything. So really taking the time to, oh yeah, he's playing an instrument, or she, or they. The pomegranates represent multiple avenues and outcomes as plentiful as their seeds. So I'm not going to read, I'm just deciding like now in the exact moment, I'm not going to read like the Fool often implies new beginnings, blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to read that part. I'm going to read the part that's referring to the symbolism. So the pomegranates are here, which is not in the sense you usually see pomegranates, like you see the inside, right? So I don't necessarily, when I see that, think pomegranates right off the bat. So that's good to remember, like the key symbols, like besides the circle, we've got the tumbi, one-stringed instrument. I'd love to hear what that sounds like. I mean, of course you can do a lot with one string, because it's essentially a string instrument, so you can, you know, anywhere you hold down the string is going to make a different note. Interesting. Okay. Now we have the Magician, which is the first untethered card. And holding an 8-pointed star, or kind of cradling it, and also a pomegranate. Is that another pomegranate? Looking down at a pomegranate. So that's we do have the gesture of as above, so below. And the focus is on the pomegranate. The focus is on the earthly, which makes sense for a magician card. Key symbols: the star, clementine, it's a clementine, and tun branches, or tun, it's T-U-N. The star and the clementine in the hands of the magician pay homage to things both earthly and celestial. All of the tools required to navigate through this life can be found down below or up above. The tun, otherwise known as tuna, branches, meanwhile, are a reference to the many uses of the tree as both timber and medicine. That's cool. See, I wish I could remember that stuff. Like, every time I read this guidebook, I'm like, oh man, all these, I'm fascinated by plants, but I very rarely can hold on to, like, you know, what they all are and what they mean and all that stuff. It's hard for me to, like, hold on to that in my feeble little brain, but I love her use of plants in this deck. So I really like, you know, traditionally you're used to seeing a representation of all 4 elements in a magician card, but the idea of, like, celestial and earthly being the 2 things to balance here, I think that kind of covers it. I think that's an alternative way to just cover the whole thing, right? I don't think I've ever looked at this magician card so long before, and I'm just kind of falling in love with it right now. Now we have another untethered person, and we have a moon above her head, the High Priestess. Key symbols: the moon, pomegranate, and flower garlands. Okay, so just for my own personal reference, so clementine is the more, like, open looking thing, and then the pomegranate looks more like, I mean, to me, it's looking like an onion to me, so I'm just, for my own personal reference, like, okay, when you think she's holding an onion, it's really a pomegranate. Okay. The High Priestess is traditionally associated with feminine power, knowledge, seeking truth, and understanding one's secret desires. She encourages us to attain knowledge from both... Okay, wait. This one is starting with, like, the description of the card's meaning, so I'm just going to have to look. It's not always, like, the same paragraph. Okay. She wears a traditional salwar kameez with little in the way of embellishment or physical trappings, removed from the material world. Scrolls and books are not present as an intentional nod to the importance of oral histories. Reversed, this card can mean... Okay, that's interesting. Just a little, like... Okay, so this one's kind of mixed up as far... maybe I do need to read the whole thing, because some of the description of the symbolism is in the first paragraph too on this one. She holds a pomegranate, symbol of femininity, power, and fertility, in one hand, and is backlit by the moon. The flowers in her hand and the flower garlands above her imply that knowledge must be cultivated before it can fully bloom. That's cool. Okay. The Empress and the Emperor I do kind of want to hold next to each other. Lately I've been thinking about just the whole idea of, because I do think they kind of, like, make sense as a scene. I think you are kind of supposed to see them as sitting right next to each other. Lately I've been like kind of healing my relationship to the Emperor card and the number 4 in general. I've decided that one of my personal keywords as to associate numerologically with the number 4 is protection. So I'm starting to, like, really take gender out of the Emperor and Empress and think of it more in terms of there's the cultivator, the creator, the nurturer, and then there's the maintainer and protector. You know, in any counterpart, in any partnership, you can most of the time, I mean, obviously things are not that binary, but most of the time, you know, you've got the one that kind of, like, makes things happen and the one that kind of deals with the structures of things. You know, like there's the creative person, and then there's the person that does all the like paperwork, you know? There's the I do sort of think of that as a mothering thing. It's a nurturing thing. But then you've got the one that just kind of holds the line, the one that holds the structure. So I used to be kind of angry about this. Sorry, it's hard for me to like get the right angle here so that you guys can see it in all of its gloriousness. Again, it's because my lighting is crappy. Ooh, can I just put this on top of here? Is that bad? I mean, I don't care if we get a bunch of incense smoke. Let's do it. You guys are here for this video being so fucking long that you're watching me like rearrange things constantly. Sure, let's do it. Hopefully that's not gonna like burn my card. We'll move it over here because it's kind of burned past that point. Okay, let's read the symbolism of the Emperor and Empress. Now I need to figure out where I'm gonna put the cards that I flip over. Okay. So Empress key symbols are abundant jewelry, dagger, and amla branches. So she's got a dagger that she's pointing towards him. Like, don't fucking cross me. You might be my partner in this life, but I will cut a bitch if I have to. And then his key symbols are identical environment to the Empress and sword. The Empress sits upon a throne. She represents maternal figures, love, abundance, and in some cases, excess. She wears a wealth of heavy jewelry, showcasing an appreciation of luxury in the material world. And also, I didn't point this out, but they both have the circles / halos above their heads. She wields a short dagger in a quiet, unassuming fashion, implying that alongside her nurturing nature, she's very protective of those she loves. So that's interesting, like I was just saying, nurturer and protector. Like, Empress is really both. Do we even need the Emperor? Maybe we don't. The garland of flowers above her head signify a love of beauty, the lush abundance of plants flanking her, suggesting growth. The Empress is associated with fertility, giving life to new beginnings. Okay, sorry, that's all just meaning stuff. I want to try to skip over that. Per Sikh scripture, so this is a description of Emperor now, a marriage is composed of a couple who share a single soul between two bodies. In this way, the Empress and Emperor exist simultaneously within the same room and the same plane, two sides of the same coin. The Emperor sits far less decorated than the Empress. A nod to practicality. His sword is held at his side in a stance that is more than deliberate, invoking power and authority. Okay, interesting. Okay, my card is not super hot. I'm not going to set it on fire. I'll just have to resist the urge to, like, I'll have to resist the personal urge to light more incense when this is done, since we're now using this as a table. Which means that I could probably zoom in a little bit more, too. Trying to resist the urge to apologize every 2 seconds because of how disorganized I am. Because, you know, it just is what it is. And here we are. Hierophant. Okay. Again, we see that circle. Key symbols, haloed finger, and amla branches. So these amla branches do show up quite a lot in this deck, especially in the major arcana. The Hierophant is depicted gesturing upward, haloed in gold, hand to his chest as if delivering an address or sermon. He requests that we turn our gaze from the physical trappings of this world and consider divine perspectives. Blah, blah, blah. The gesture, his hand gesture, to an endless sky, a metaphor for the endless nature of the divine. He too is flanked by amla branches, this time in reference to their affiliation with Amrit, ambrosia or holy nectar. Ooh, Amrit! That's why she's so connected to amla branches, because it's her namesake. Okay, Just kind of skimming through the rest to make sure there's no other discussion of the symbolism. I really like this Hierophant because I do get like a spiritual nod from this Hierophant, but at the same time, like with Hierophant cards, sometimes you can really get, I don't know, it can feel preachy. Like, I don't want to see a pope in a Hierophant card. I just don't. But this one, there's no worry of that, really. Okay, here we are. We're here. My favorite Lovers card of all time. So, the reason I love this card so much is because they're both wearing bridal wear, and they're looking into each other. You know, it's just very respectful, intent gaze upon each other. And like, if that's not a Lover's card, I don't know what is. And I also love the moon in the background as well. So, key symbols: the moon, pomegranate blossoms, and bridal jewelry. So these are pomegranate blossoms. Okay, will I remember that? Probably not. This depiction of the lovers is in direct reference to the poetry of Sheikh Farid, who suggests that all people are brides to the divine in death. And I like that because that kind of ties in my own personal meaning with the Lovers card. I don't always see it as like a relationship to another person necessarily, but more like the relationship to yourself. And therefore, if you are a person that conceptualizes the divine, then it's the relationship to the divine. The relationship to the divine is your relationship to yourself. A bride in this context refers to the soul, which departs the earthly home for another. Both of the lovers are donned in salwar kameez, and each wear a tika upon their forehead, typical of bridal jewelry. The pomegranate blossoms and the moon both symbolize femininity. So this is also, like, if you want to see it this way, they're both wearing bridal jewelry. So one thing I love about decks like this, decks, either animal decks or skeletal decks like this, is that there's no diversity needs to be present because all diversity is present. You know what I mean? You can put yourself in any position no matter who you are. That is something that I really love about decks like that. And I also love that, you know, if you want, like, they're both wearing bridal jewelry. So for me, being a person that is mostly straight, like 2/3 straight leaning, I like more feminine men, but also you could see this as two women, or you could see this as two men, or you could see it as two whoever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But I love that they're both wearing bridal jewelry. That just sings to my heart in specific. So I'm going to set this one aside because I do want to show it next to the devil when we get to that point. I guess I could just put the whole stack on here so I don't have to keep going to find the card. Will this work? I think so. Okay. The Chariot. So I'm fine with the Chariot being a bicycle, I guess. Bikes aren't my particular thing, but so who cares? Again, we do get, like, this one isn't a filled in circle, but it's still like a divine circular situation, right? Key symbols: bicycle, the sun, and tune branches. Okay, that's the sun. That's just the sun behind his head. I like that too. Sun at your back and you're moving forward. That makes sense. As opposed to a literal chariot, a figure in a salwar kameez takes a more direct, self-directed journey on a bicycle. In this fashion, the chariot is intended to highlight the act of choice in both major and mundane decisions. The tune branches, meanwhile, symbolize the speed at which change manifests, as it is a species of tree that is quick to propagate. Okay, searching. Okay, yeah, I think that's all the symbolism here. Love this strength card. I have a pin of this. It's very, like, I haven't even read Hamlet, But, like, isn't this like a Hamlet situation? This reminds me of the, like, to be or not to be thing, right? Isn't it? Key symbols, golden skull and rose bushes. So we do have, like, the sort of circular divinity thing around both figures here. And roses as well. Kind of confused about, like, what is happening down here? Some kind of, like, drapery situation, but I'm confused about what where its parameters are. I don't know, whatever, doesn't matter. Just sorting through to find the symbolism discussion here. Standing in rose bushes, the figure of strength gazes at a golden skull, the individual coming to terms with their own shortcomings, mortality, and reality. This card is associated with self-control, self-inspection, and finding the power to navigate adversity with grace. Okay, so there's not a whole lot of discussion of symbolism in this particular card, but I think it's pretty easy to see what it is. I don't mind that, like, even though I really dislike when a deck doesn't have a lot of animal energy, and this deck only has 3 cards with animal imagery. If I remember correctly, it's only 3. It's the Celestial Siblings, which we're going to get to soon-ish. But I don't mind with this deck. This deck feels like a very personal deck. This deck feels like almost specific. Like, this deck isn't going to talk to you about what anyone else feels. This deck isn't going to talk to you about the future. This deck is only going to talk to you about who you are now. Who you are in the past and who you are now. It's very present. And it won't talk to you about, like, I mean, I hate to personify my decks because it, you know, whatever I'm putting on this is just however this deck specifically works for me. What I think of when I see this imagery is what I mean by that, even though I am personifying it. This deck for me does not give a shit about trivial stuff. Like, if I try to ask some trivial, stupid question, it's like, no, we're not doing that here. That's not what we're here for. This deck is a spiritual deck. This deck is it takes itself really seriously, but it's warranted. Hermit time. Key symbols, lantern and amla branches. So again, we get more amla branches. And we have the lantern. And he's kind of hanging out on a log. I feel like there's some water in the background, maybe. It's just kind of the hint of water. So you don't necessarily have to see it that way. Hermit sits quietly and considers his next move. He is surrounded by young amla branches, a symbol for connecting with the divine when beginning to look inward. The lantern shines brightly in the darkness, a metaphor for new perspectives and spiritual enlightenment. This one, like, kind of bothered me at first because of, like, the cut off fingers. But I was thinking about it last night and I was like, nope, I get it now. So I'm going to try not to explain the whole situation just because it's another aside that's going to make this video the longest one ever. But just a reference for those of you that know, this actually reminds me, the cutting off of the fingers reminds me of my favorite graphic novel of all time, which is called Kabuki Circle of Blood. So there's this moment that involves a person biting off the smallest bone at the end of her pinky in order to gain the upper hand and literally turn the tables, because she ends up spitting her finger bone across the table at a bunch of, like, business dudes, and it distracts them long enough for her to gain the upper hand in the situation. So that made me think of taking fate into your own hands, which is a way that I've never really thought of the Wheel of Fortune, but I'm gonna start from now on. So just this project, like, just thinking about, like, what am I gonna say about this particular card, because I was literally thinking about that as I was falling asleep last night. What am I gonna say about the Wheel of Fortune? That card confuses me. And then I thought of it, And then I thought of exactly why it makes sense. Why don't I sit alone and have these conversations with myself? I don't know, but apparently I have to press record in order to have these thoughts. I don't think that the card itself is necessarily going to agree with me when we read the description here in a second, but I do also see gorgeous, like, I sometimes don't know the difference between chrysanthemums and marigolds, but I think these are chrysanthemums. And it looks like we're seeing more amla branches here, but I could be wrong about that too. Let's consult. Key symbols: chaff cutter, chrysanthemums, yay, I was right, and severed fingers. Hand-cranked chaff cutters are traditionally used on Punjabi farms to cut hay for livestock feed. Chaff cutters are known for amputating fingers in the event of their operators losing focus of their work. The chaff cutter and its blades are the wheel of fortune, bordered by 4 hands, some of which sport missing fingers. Amla branches and chrysanthemum flowers imply healing and optimism. So I was right about the amla branches and the chrysanthemums. I'm not sure, like, reading that description, I still don't understand, like, why are some of the fingers cut off? Is that just sort of like to say in general that, you know, sometimes fate deals us dirty and sometimes it doesn't? Lady luck, right? Maybe I need to stop doing this. Damn it. I need a better system. So she's got the divine circle behind her head. Those don't look the same, so those aren't amla branches. Key symbols: amalthus flowers and golden mace. Amalthus flowers. I mean, that's these though, right? Justice holds a spiked mace and waits. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, I don't really see. The amalthus tree and its flowers hanging overhead have widespread medicinal uses, a reference to the restorative properties of justice. Okay, so this is like, hopefully what I can remember from this, even if I don't remember what kind. It's amalthus flowers and branches. But in case I don't remember that, if I can just remember that it is known for its medicinal properties. Very symmetrical image too. I love that. But not obsessively so. Like, her body is not literally mirrored. It is holding the same stance, but it's not been literally mirrored. There's differences. I guess there's not really differences in the plants, but there's differences in, like, her arms. Hanged man. Just a pretty traditional hanged man. Key symbols: Bahara trees and gold cord. The hanged man swings from the branches of 2 Bahara trees on a gold rope. The tree shows no fruit. Too early in the season to determine how much it might bear. So that makes sense. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily look at that and go, that bears no fruit. But it's because I don't recognize what kind of tree it is. Hanged man is suspended in time. Positive and negative outcomes stretch out before him. Okay. Now we get to death. So this is the most important card in the deck to Amrit Brar. So there's a special, like, section at the back on death. So I'm going to read both what's in the guidebook just as you flip along, and I'm going to read that part in the back that I showed you earlier. Key symbols: short sickle, wheat halo, and barren land. So I do think that this is an effective death card. This is death in the moment of culling. And I think that's powerful. Death is depicted as a farmer. His head is haloed with a pattern resembling wheat. His hand holding a short sickle traditionally used for harvesting crops. So it's like he's harvesting a person. So your usefulness has not ended. is kind of how I see that. I'm going to pause really quick because I'm going to plug in or change my battery or something. No, I'm going to wait. I still have 18 minutes. I don't have to change the battery yet. Death operates as the farmer does, allowing the seeds of life to have their time to grow and flourish before making room for new life to take its course. The land on which he stands is currently barren, but growth occurs behind him, implying that new life will soon take root. Death is associated with transformation. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Let's go to the extra card, the extra interpretation of death that's in the back of the book. Death, 13, and the farmer. In traditional Rider-Waite-Smith decks, death is often the only card represented by a skeletal figure, or Grim Reaper. It may appear as the most familiar card in the Marigold Tarot, though its depiction in this deck portrays the act of reaping more literally than some versions of the card may venture. The scythe, Death's traditional tool in RWS-style decks, was reimagined as a short sickle, the types traditionally used by Punjabi farmers. The number 13 in Gurmukhi, meanwhile, is pronounced Terra. Ooh. I know I've read this guidebook before, but I have no memory. And Terra being like earth. Terra being... yeah. When spoken, Terra can also conflate with the meaning for thine or yours. As such, the number 13 is often associated with divinity and belonging. It is a number upon which an individual can meditate when considering themselves as a possession or component of a greater universe or being. Wow. Goosebumps again. In this way, this card can be seen as a heart of this deck. It is the magnetic north, the figure by which all other icons and figures are judged. It is transformative and asks that we consider perpetual endings, perpetual beginnings, the simultaneous cycles of death and rebirth that surround us in all avenues of our lives. Death works with a swiftness and deliberation. It cuts at the root of excuses and extrapolations. Love it. Love it. Okay. This video is going to be so long. Temperance. Love it. I do remember that this is Azrael, the Angel of Death. Key symbols: wings, awesome tea plants, and tea flowing between vessels. Okay, so we're supposed to see that as tea. Okay, well, it could be bourbon, could be coffee, it doesn't have to be tea. The figure of temperance here is intended to invoke, it says Azrael, the Angel of Death. Okay, I've never seen, get in the shot here, never seen that particular, I thought it was Asriel, but of course it's not Azrael because that's a Christian angel. Azrael. So I misremembered that. The Angel of Death. The only angel briefly mentioned by name in Sikh scripture. Ooh. Temperance pours hot tea back and forth between two vessels in order to cool it and is flanked by black tea leaves. The cycle between the life of the plant and the byproduct of its death. Ooh, that, knowing that this comes right after death, too. It's yeah, death happened. That person was cold, but that person is now something else that is still useful. Like it. Okay. Okay, it's time for the devil. So I'm going to read the description of the devil, and then we're going to show the lovers and the devil together because they are connected. They are the same people. Key symbols: chain viper, bird's eye chili pepper plants. The chain viper was specifically chosen as its pattern emulates the devil's associations with bondage and the traps laid by vice. Chain vipers are incredibly venomous and often categorized as aggressive. The snake hangs loosely, not so tight to restrict the figures, but the possibility looms over them. The bird's eye chili pepper plants are present as a reference to the act of burning the peppers in order to undo Nazar, or the evil eye. So there is a special section on the Devil and the Lovers in the back. So I'm going to go to that now. I remembered, guys. I remembered. The Lovers and the Devil. The two figures present in the Lovers and the Devil are traditionally the same characters in different circumstances. I wish more tarot decks would utilize that symbolism. Like, sometimes there's a relationship between the two cards and sometimes there isn't. Obviously there is in the RWS. I don't know a whole lot about. I just ordered my first Marseille deck, guys. I got the Triomphe della Luna by Deviant Moon that is in the purple variation. So it'll be my only Marseille deck. I have not traditionally been interested in Marseille, but Anna, I blame you because you love that deck so much. And I'm learning more about numerology, and I'm just I feel like I'm ready now for a Marseille deck, and that deck is very different from other Marseille decks, so I think I could actually vibe with it because of all the purple and monsters. Anyway, I wish more tarot decks would employ a clear relationship between the Lovers and the Devil, because it is 6 and 15. Numerologically, these two cards are different halves of the same whole. When you're at harmony with yourself, it looks like this. When you're not, it looks like that. You know, this is very clear. This is the most beautiful relationship between Lovers and Devil ever, in my opinion. Okay, I'm gonna shut up now. In the case, two figures present in the Lovers and the Devil are traditionally the same characters in different circumstances. In the case of the Devil, the characters of the Lovers are depicted as entrapped or chained by vice. The two cards show a disparity in relationships, the concept of harmonious unity versus dependency. The Lovers wear a tika upon their foreheads, and there is a moon hanging overhead, symbolizing the desire to see past illusions and falsehoods. In the Devil, only one figure is depicted with a halo around their head. Okay. Yep. Suggesting disharmony or an attempt to enlighten oneself while another lags behind, languishing in their chains. So this is sometimes a relationship with somebody can start out being like soulmates, but then you just go down different roads. And you're remembering this, and you're staying together because you remember this, but you aren't this anymore. You're this now, That happens. Okay, hold on. While another lags behind, languishing in their chains. The pomegranate blossom of the Lovers can be associated with prosperity and opportunity. The bird's eye chili peppers hanging in the image of the Devil suggests a need to ward away ill intention. The direction of the gaze is also conspicuous. Genuine relationships observe one another wholly and completely, as in the case of the Lovers, while the characters of the Devil card cannot see eye to eye. I just love that so much. Oh my god. Just bask in the beauty. Okay, I do need to change batteries now, so I will be right back. So you guys are have to watch me fumble with these cards over and over. It's just my life. I'm always fumbling with things. I have dyspraxia. Okay. That's my excuse for everything. Okay. That looks mostly like it did before, doesn't it? Okay. The Tower. Okay, so just because this deck is so fucking beyond amazing, I'm a little disappointed just in general of this Tower card because it's so typical. But let's see what the guidebook has to say about it. Key symbols: stormy skies, lightning, and carnations. So at least there's the addition of the carnations. There's going to be a specific reason for that, so let's find it. Lightning strikes a lone tower and stormy skies hang overhead, implying that the scene will soon be overtaken. Below the chaos, carnations signify an attempt to remain poised in the face of strife. Okay. Now we get to the Celestial Siblings. So I am going to read each card individually, and I will, again, go to the point in the back of the book that talks about these celestial siblings together as a trilogy, as a triptych. But I do want to have them all out so you can see them all at once. So this is the only animal energy in the whole deck, unfortunately, but it is done so well. These cards are breathtaking. So in the star we have key symbols, 6 feathers, house crow's skull, and a star overhead. First of the celestial siblings, the star is symbolized by a house crow's skull, 6 feathers, and a star etched in gold overhead. The markings on the crow skull are intended to evoke drops of water, which is associated with purity. In folklore, many bird species are commonly believed to navigate using the stars. We prepare ourselves to navigate through new beginnings, new opportunities, liberation, and freedom in the same fashion. Drops of water. I forget that. Like, I remember that this is a crow skull, but I forget to look at the symbols on the forehead. And we do have this gorgeous, like, compass-looking star. Now, the moon. Key symbols: Bindi, Indian flying fox skull, and the moon. Second of the celestial siblings is the moon. Subconscious fears, deception, and illusions. The skull is that of an Indian flying fox, a bat that navigates. See, I always just remember this as a bat skull, but I guess that's not. It is. But it's flying fox, a bat that navigates the same dark nights, literal and metaphorical, that send so many of us into tailspins of anxiety and fear. Wow, that just reminds me of, like, you know, the long dark night of the soul. There's a Roxy Music lyric that is, "I'll find myself if it takes all night." That is terrible, by the way. I didn't even find the tune, so let's pretend that didn't happen. And I'm too lazy to edit it out, so y'all are just going to have to decide to pretend that didn't happen with me. Okay. But it does remind me of that. This species of bat is largely regarded as vermin, despite evidence to the contrary. This alludes to the moon's nature of miscommunication, trauma, and misunderstanding. That there are negative behaviors we may practice despite knowing better. Take note of the knowledge available and seek further information to form a more complete picture of your circumstances and surroundings. Okay. And then we have the sun. Key symbols: Asiatic lion skull, 3 dots, and the sun. So this one, instead of having like a little forehead decoration, it has these 3 little dots on the chin. I don't know if you can see that with the overexposure that we have going on here. There, you can kind of see it here. Third of the celestial siblings, the sun is represented by the skull of an Asiatic, I said Asiatic before, but there's a second S, lion haloed in its mane, much as the sun is haloed above. Lions are perceived as symbols of power, prosperity, strength, and optimism. The 3 dots on the chin of the lion skull are marks intended to ward away Nazar, the evil eye, and encourage the continued accumulation of good fortune. Okay, let's read the extra situation in the back about the celestial siblings. I need a drink of water. The choice to represent these 3 cards with animal skulls as opposed to human skulls was deliberate. Much like the movement of heavenly bodies is often beyond our grasp, so too is the understanding of non-human intuition, emotion, and intelligence. There are times when we may feel like our emotional responses and mentality are confusing and alien. We may find ourselves unable to dissect why we give in to certain thoughts and behaviors, or feel like strangers within our own bodies. The star, the moon, and the sun cover a wide range of feelings and experiences, everything from hope to disillusionment, optimism to pessimism, clarity and deep-seated confusion. These cards are unified through mirrored iconography. The skulls and celestial icons have nearly identical placement in all 3 images. This is to deliberately reference synchronicity. All of these sensations and experiences can and often do happen simultaneously in our lives. We can have great hope for the future while feeling incredibly lost in the present, grapple with anxiety and longing while still finding things to be deeply grateful for. I like that. Like, you can bask in the sun and still embrace your own darkness and have hope for the future. That's all I want. That's all I want out of life. Isn't that all we want? I don't know. Okay. Next is Judgment. Oops. This one is, I'll acknowledge that I am kind of picky about the Judgment card in general, and I don't love this one. This one just looks really, sometimes I still, even though I know this deck really well, I just at first glance think this is the Death card. I mean, it does look different, but I mean, I think, so we see these arrows. This person is probably helping the other person, or maybe this person's the one that put the arrows in that person. We do see a halo here, so I think we are supposed to see this figure as good, so this person probably did not. This person is probably helping the other person. It's confusing to me as to how this is the Judgment card, so hey, let's just read the guidebook, shall we? Key symbols: chrysanthemums and golden arrows. A figure bears down on another, almost oppressive at first glance, as they push their arrow-struck body into the depths of the chrysanthemums. We have experienced fundamental change, blah, blah, blah. Judgment transforms us, and the bed of chrysanthemum flowers into which the figure falls refers to a place to experience rest, rebirth, and arise from again, stronger and more complete. Judgment does not always appear positive in its execution, but ultimately seeks what is best for us. Okay, so we're supposed to be like, what? This doesn't look good. But then we're supposed to turn our attention to the chrysanthemums and remember that they symbolize rebirth. So it's a little bit of a winding road, and I can't say that I will remember that. But this is one of those situations where, like, you know, when you first get a deck, and even now, I've had this deck for 2.5 years. When you first get it, you might just have a bad reaction to a particular card. But then in time, especially with explanations of the symbolism from the artist, you can come to peace with the symbolism. And through that, you can learn more about symbolism in general, learn more about the tarot in general. Like, not always, like sometimes just a shitty card is a shitty card. But in this situation, it's like, I didn't quite get it. And then I read the guidebook and I get it, but then I forget again, and it's a whole cycle. Eventually, I will fully make peace with this card, which probably means it will become one of my favorite cards. You know what I mean? World card. I really, really love this World card, even though the Magician didn't necessarily represent all 4 elements, and that was fine in that case. It's made up for in the World card, because we see the dagger, so that's air. We see the teeth, maybe that's earth. We see the bat, maybe that's air again. I don't know. We see the branches, which is definitely, it's almost like we're seeing the symbols that are going to represent the 4 suits as soon as we get into them. And since we have now finished with the major arcana, because the skulls in this deck are cups, the daggers are swords, the plants are wands. The only thing that we don't really see represented here is earth, but this is a ring of teeth. So therefore, ring suit. Key symbols: mustard blossoms, skull, dagger, ring of teeth, and bat. All 4 symbols of the minor arcana are present here. Oh my god. Yep. I mean, I said that, and I have read the guidebook, but I said that because that is how I see this card, so that's good that I'm right. The skull for cups, the ring of teeth, the dagger for swords, and the stems of mustard blossoms acting as wands. Above, the small mouse-eared bat is intended to represent mortals existing alongside the deceased. The world is constantly in flux, a medley of growth and decay occurring simultaneously. All right. I just love that. Just a side note. Amrit Brar's website, 13th Press, she has so many gorgeous, beautifully made things that you can buy to go with this deck. Somehow I've resisted buying all of them, but someday it's gonna happen. I mean, she's got pins, candles, blankets, just all the things. I want them all. Okay. So because I had to change the battery, I don't actually know how far in we are at this point, but it's got to be at least over an hour. I'm trying to decide, do I want to stop now? Oh shit, I probably should stop now and just make this a two-parter. What do you guys think? I mean, I guess you can't literally answer me right now when I need to actually make the decision. I should probably stop here so we can do a major Arcana exploration of Marigold Tarot and then a minor, maybe? Probably should do that, right? Since we are like really taking our time going through each card and like we're only like a third of the way through the deck, not even. So yeah, should probably go ahead and stop here. So thank you for watching. We'll just put this little guidebook here. Maybe. There we go. That looks good. So thank you guys for watching. Oh my god, this is ridiculous. But I really do want to do this series because it's going to, at the very least, it's going to teach me to be more connected with the tarot decks I already have. And since I'm currently trying to overcome my tendency to buy too many tarot decks and just online shopping problems in general, this will hopefully help me to appreciate the things that I already have. And hopefully it can also be for those of you that like maybe you just acquired this deck and you're having a hard time wrapping your head around the symbolism. And this is a way that like you can see someone else go through the symbolism with you, go through the guidebook with you, and hopefully it kind of feels a little bit like a hangout session in that way. And maybe you'll see something in a deck that you already have. Maybe you have one of the same ones that I do during this series, and you'll be able to kind of focus in on what you love about these tarot decks that you already have that maybe you forgot. So hopefully this will be a good series for you guys. If not, that's fine. You can just skip over it and wait for one of my other videos. Yeah, anyway, thank you guys for being here with me today, and I will see you in the next one. Bye! Hello mixtresses and mixters, this is mixtressrae and you're watching Mixtress Video. So it's time for part 2, unless for some reason I decided to put it all in one video, of the exploration of deep dive into Marigold Tarot. So I just got out a different little box because this will be a better setup, right? So let's talk about the minor arcana. So starting with the wands. So again, if for some reason I did make this as a two-parter and you're just stumbling onto this, what I'm doing essentially is I'm going through the entire Marigold Tarot, card by card, and I'm reading in the guidebook, which is, I'll just hold the spine up here, maybe. Marigold Tarot, A Guide to the Symbolism. So this deck in particular is very internally consistent. And it explores Punjabi and Sikh culture and life and death, and it's a skeleton deck primarily. I think I'm going to move this over so when I flip the cards over you can see the gorgeous backs of the cards over in this space. Okay, so let's get into it. Let's get back into it. The suit of wands is traditionally associated with the element of fire. It explores ambition, creativity, change, the ego, and growth. In this deck, Wands is represented by stems of a variety of flowers, the significance of each flower mirroring the original intentions of the suit. Growth, in the most organic of fashions, is unavoidable. All things live, evolve, and die to make room for others to do the same. So, this is, as far as this is kind of a pippish deck. There's definitely symbolism inherent in every single card. But for me, and probably for others, the connection to the symbolism is not as readily available for me personally in the Wands suit. The Wands is still the hardest for me to wrap my head around, because to me, I kind of want to remember what the different plants are in each card to make the connection to the meaning of the card. And of course, each and every card has the whole, Ace of Wands, Two of Wands, Three of Wands, whatever, title on the bottom. So it's not like you're confused about which card it is. But sometimes just that knee-jerk reaction when you see a card when you first pulled it in a spread, sometimes it takes a little longer to make the connection in the Wands, in my experience with this deck. So I might even spend a little bit of extra time on this part of the video just because it's a little harder for me to read it. As far as an Ace of Wands card, seeing a rose doesn't automatically take me to an Ace of Wands feeling, you know what I mean? But let's, again, with the guidebook, the descriptions are shorter. They take up half a page instead of 2 pages like the Major Arcana did. So hopefully we'll be able to go through this part of the video, or this part of the series, if I did choose to use 2 separate videos. Hopefully this will go faster. Key symbols: rose and gold thorns. And that's it. It doesn't say anything about, it just says, it doesn't say anything about why this connects to the Ace of Wands in general. As far as just an introduction to the minor arcana, if you want to see the rose in a kind of a traditional sense of rose standing in for secrets and arcana, that does make sense in that sense. That makes sense. So let's just see it that way, shall we? And then thorns, obviously, any new creative venture that you go down in the path of the Wands and the path of creativity and goals, you're going to hit thorns along the way, right? That sounds so cliche, but I still kind of have trouble with this Ace of Wands. I think these are mustard plants, mustard blossoms or something. Nope, they're not. Key symbols: flowering dill. This card signifies courage and power, of which dill is a symbol. The dill is crossed, mimicking the many branching forks of the path in life. So this is a good 2 of Wands, really. But just, for me, I always want to remember what the plant is. And it hurts my connection to the Wands suit in this deck a little. I'll take away this incense burner, so it's creating shadow. This one I actually do remember because this is Forsythia. And where I live in the Midwest of America, Forsythia is one of the very first plants to bushes. I think it's just considered a bush. It's one of the first bushes or trees or whatever you fucking call it that flowers in the spring. So the fact that, I would have preferred to see these in the shape of a triangle, just personally, but this way you can see more of them, being that they're upright or straight up. I really like that as a 3 of Wands, because I think of the 3s as a portal and, foresight. So it makes sense that they're Forsythia branches. But let's look at the guidebook. Key symbol: Forsythia stems. Forsythia stems symbolize foresight, which this card encourages us to exercise with an open mind. So great, 3 of Wands. Then we have chrysanthemums for the 4 of Wands. I'm not sure why that's 4 of Wands. Let's see what the guidebook says. This card symbolizes home, celebration, joy, and harmony, much as the chrysanthemum flower does. Okay, that's all we got. So the chrysanthemums symbolize home, which works for me. I mean, I love chrysanthemums. It's just, yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't want to keep repeating that it's... Plants are amazing, but like without other symbols in the cards, if you don't know that chrysanthemums symbolize home, if you're not a botanist psychic, I don't know what you would call that, but then it might be a little harder for you in this suit. Here we have mustard flowers. Wild mustard is an incredibly competitive plant when growing alongside wheat or other crops and can greatly reduce their yield. So this is a competitive situation. So if you have mustard flowers, look out, that's the only thing that's going to be around. Okay. This one is a little easier because, like, if you're used to RWS, if you're used to sort of the victory wreath, this one, at least, the, what is it? Evening primrose is in the shape of a wreath. Primrose flower centers itself among its ilk. Okay. This one's kind of a hard one for me, especially because I don't see how this is... It doesn't look like one thing is standing out above the others, which is kind of what you would expect in a 7 of Wands, right? But let's read the description. Mignonette, branches, fruit, and flowers. This card concerns itself with disobedience, resistance, and determination. The mignonette branches? I don't know. I should probably show you that word, in case you know how to pronounce that. Mignonette, are shown in different stages of their lives. Mindy, made from the leaves, is used to mark the body. In the same way, this card symbolizes marking oneself. Okay, so I need to remember that these are the branches and flowers that later become Mindy/henna artwork. Okay. See, that's hard to remember, though. Like, yes, it all makes sense. It's all backed up, but yeah. Anyway, another one that's hard for me. Burr, branches, and fruit. This card symbolizes new developments, action, completing projects, and resolving conflicts. The burr tree grows very quickly and yields fruit, much as one's efforts will by being decisive and determined. I feel like we saw the burr tree early on. I think it was here, although I can't totally tell if that's the same thing. Was it the chariot? I guess I should probably confirm that, right? Instead of just being like, I don't know, maybe. Yeah, that was not the chariot. Where else do we see the burr tree? I feel like we did. Where was it? Okay, I don't know. I thought we saw it somewhere, but apparently I either was wrong or I just can't find it right now, and I don't want to waste y'all's time. So I'm gonna move on. Okay, wait, where were we? Grows very quickly and yields fruit. So just the mere, you have to know that this is a burr tree and that it yields fruit very quickly, which, you know, yeah, totally legit, like I said. I'm going to stop repeating myself. Key symbol, sunflowers. This card symbolizes persistence and resilience in the face of adversity. Despite being challenged when pursuing new goals, it is important to rise to the occasion and stand proudly, much as the sunflower does. This one is much easier for me because I can, even though you don't normally see sunflowers in a Nine of Pentacles, it's easy for me to, or sorry, Nine of Pentacles. Okay, apparently it's not. Never mind, because I was imagining the Nine of Pentacles. But we're looking at the Nine of Wands, so okay. I actually am confused by this one too. Ten of Wands, this one's easy for me to remember because of the placement. Because I remember in the guidebook, as I'm about to read, these branches up here, these 9, right? 3, 6, 9, yes. The 9 branches up here are meant to look like they're oppressive to the one below. Amalthus flowers. This card implies heavy burdens, being overwhelmed, and struggle. The amalthus flowers hang heavily over the lone branch that has fallen, almost oppressive. So I just kind of wish that the placement of the flowers evoked more of the symbolism, I guess, in the suit. That would be helpful. Page of Wands, symbol is roses. They carry a bouquet of roses, bereft of thorns, as they have had the foresight to protect themselves. That's something that I don't normally remember. But I like the connection between the page and the ace, because I do think of them as sister energies in general. The fact that she's holding roses that they are holding roses that they have removed the thorns from is a progression from the ace that had thorns. So I like that. Knight of Wands. The Knight of Wands, key symbol, gladiolus. Knight of Wands contains high, near foolhardy amounts of energy. This is a card that implies that impetuousness and grandstanding is present, as well as rashness, overconfidence, and infatuation, as the gladiolus represents. Okay, so that's really the only thing here, is that, like, the gladiolus is, like, overconfidence, charisma. Lots of charisma in the Knight of Wands, right? But we do still have, like, the halo situation, which we did have in the page as well. And we do also have in the Queen. And I do like a connection between a 9 and the Queen, so the fact that the 9 of Wands had sunflowers and so does the Queen, I do enjoy that. I don't know why, but probably just because I love queens. And 9 is my favorite number. So here we have Queen of Wands symbolizes steady, well-deserved confidence. Blah, 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 ba, da, ba, da. I don't want to read the whole description. I just want to read whenever she refers to the symbolism, which she really didn't in that description. So let's move on to the King. Key symbol, Field of Marigolds. Holds a marigold aloft as he stands among the flowers, his gesture sweeping, his presence undeniable. Although he is donned in simple clothes, his character speaks for itself. So, we're supposed to see this as simple clothes, which I don't know enough about the clothing in Sikh and Punjabi culture to know what is simple and not simple, so I'm glad that that is in the guidebook spelled out. I want to note that this is a card that blah, 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 blah. We do not get, and I believe this is consistent throughout, but I will be paying attention to let you know for sure. Both the page and the knight do not have gendered language in the description, but we do get she as a pronoun in the Queen and he as a pronoun in the King. It's just a note. I like that personally. Let's move on to the cups. So the cups in this deck are, I'll just read from the guidebook what it says because there's a little introduction to each suit. The suit of cups is traditionally associated with the element of water and navigates our emotions, love lives, and relationships. In the Marigold Tarot, cups is represented by skulls behaving as a vessel, as the skull is the home of an individual's emotional experiences and mental well-being. This suit asks us to confront how we navigate our feelings in regards to ourselves and those around us. So, I really like this. This entire suit is really powerful to me. Skulls as vessels. So this one, I think we're seeing pomegranate seeds and pomegranate blossoms, yes. So there's sort of that potential of like, and also a connection to the Queen of Cups. This, for some reason, reminds me of a connection to the Queen of Cups, just in general, because of the pomegranate, because of the self-knowledge. Also a connection to the High Priestess, because whenever you fully know yourself and know your own emotions, that is when you unlock the keys to the universe. You know, it's all about knowing thyself, right? So this, and you also have the halo. Anyway, key symbol, pomegranate seeds and pomegranate blossoms. Pomegranate seeds are plentiful alongside their blossom, because love is plentiful in the Ace of Cups. I love this Two of Cups too. Like, we get that same sort of direct gaze that we got in the Lover's card, but if you look really closely, you see a sun on this forehead and a moon on this forehead. And again, you get that circle of divinity in the background. You also get roses. So this is just very, very obviously love, right? Key symbols, roses. Partnership and palpable romantic energy. The skulls gaze at one another as if enraptured. Gorgeous, gorgeous Two of Cups, right? I really like this 3 too. Key symbols, sunflower and pouring tea. Or bourbon, whatever. This card associates itself with friendship, ties, and bonds. I also like just something about the composition of this image, the 2 cups pouring into the 3rd. This sort of reminds me of, like, anytime you are, like, kind of integrating a new friend group, maybe it's, if it is 3 people, it's generally like 2 people have already been really close and they're bringing in a 3rd person. And if they're doing it in a respectful, wonderful way, they are sharing, you know, like if you're looking at 2 of Cups becoming 3, you know, they are sharing what they have already established together with the 3rd person. They are pouring everything that they've created together into the new person. I don't know. That just, something about that is just goosebumpy to me. It makes me fizzy, as Kellyanne Maddox would say. It's fizzy. This card associates itself with friendship, ties, and bonds. It's a card of celebration. Golden tea can be shared, pouring over onto a jubilant sunflower. Good intentions and news being passed from individual to individual. Good intentions, yeah. With a lot of the Cups cards in this deck, even though I don't generally read with reversals, reversals are built in. So for me, just the symbolism is perfect for reversals, right? Because with the 4 of Cups, it's about emotional stability. And no matter which way you pull this, to me, a reversed 4 of Cups is still just the 4 of Cups, you know? It's apathy is just such a neutral emotion that apathy or meditation, either way you want to see the 4 of Cups, and I think it depends on the reading and the person, right? But either way, whether it's upright or reversed, I think it's going to be the same. And the fact that this image is like completely symmetrical, no matter how you turn it, it's the same meaning to me. Key symbol, periwinkle. This card can symbolize disinterest, blah, 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 blah. Despite an abundance of optimistic periwinkle, the skulls rotate around the frame, heads tipped downward. So they can't see the primrose that's in their heads, and they can't see the primrose being offered to them. So that mimics an RWS traditional 4 of Cups, right? Great. Oh, it's brilliant. It's brilliant in its simplicity and beauty. And again, with the 5 of Cups, I mean, I don't even feel like I'm still going to do it because I've been doing it, but I don't even think I need the guidebook because we have 5 upside down cups. This is grief. And if you read it reversed, the cups are upright. So it's either glass half empty or glass half full. Again, I think we've got the primrose, right? Is that primrose again? No, it's mayapple. How is that not? Doesn't that look like the same? I mean, to me it looks the same. Sorry. There's too many different plants, Amrit. Some of us are dumb. Some of us don't know all the plants. Okay? Mayapple. This card concerns itself with regret, loss, blah, blah, blah. Mayapple flowers protruding from within them at different stages of the plant's life. The plant's poisonous nature is a reference to the destructive nature of sorrow in excess. But in this case, like, even though the flowers, the plants are a part of the symbolism, because of the imagery, you don't necessarily need to know the backstory of the plants. Six of Cups. Again, we're back to periwinkle. And I still can't tell the difference. Can you tell the difference? I can't tell the difference. But this is periwinkle and that was mayapple, apparently. This card signifies innocence, positive relationships, nostalgia, and harmony in the home. The periwinkle flowers bud, grow, and die, as is the natural order of all things. Okay. Again, like, a lot of these cards are meant to symbolize the progression of a life cycle of a plant. But I don't necessarily get that. I mean, maybe you guys do. I think it's really smart, but it's hard for me to pick up on that without reading the guidebook. Because I don't necessarily know that these aren't just different plants. But meditating on the card, I guess you can really see that, like, this looks more like a dying plant. So this is just different parts of the, and this looks, these two look like more beginnings. This is flowering. This is dying. I mean, yeah, if I really look at it, I can see that. This one's just a little bit harder for me. Seven of Cups. This one's pretty good. I do kind of wish that, you know, we got a different thing in every single cup vessel. But I do like the sort of like psychic eye, and then we do have different things. Again, that reversal is kind of built in, where it's just slightly less of an optimistic daydream if the skull is upside down. The skull in the middle is upside down, but everything else is, this is mostly a crystallographic image, because everything is kind of, the symmetry is centered. Everything's pointing in to the center. Where are we? Key symbols: night gladiolus flowers, feathers, and third eye. Night gladiolus flowers allude to memory, the feathers to the flighty nature of thought, and the third eye to introspection and our inner voice. So this is more like kind of a warning, Seven of Cups, like pay attention to your intuition, right? Preoccupation with fantasy. Like, I don't really see the Seven of Cups as being kind of that more negative connotation that Amrit Brar kind of sees it, but I don't think that this card looks negative, quote unquote, so I think you can view it however you want. Eight of Cups. I think this is a great Eight of Cups because you have just, again, this reversal would be the exact same interpretation as the upright, and that makes sense to me as an Eight of Cups because you have the juxtaposition of looking inward, looking outward, looking outward, looking inward. Like, it would be the same either way, because this is a situation that it's double stability, right? Because it's 4 times 4 times 2. It's, you know, you're so fucking stable, you're done, you're ready to go. It's not a bad situation that you're leaving, but it's time to go. You know, I feel like I can see that in this image. Key symbols: poppy. This card can represent a change of direction, moving on from disharmony to seek balance, disappointment, and abandonment. The poppy and the opiates derived from it can be used to assist in healing, but can also cause harm when abused. I want to kind of just look at, okay, so we saw this is periwinkle, right? No, this is mayapple. This is periwinkle, and this is poppy. So I can see the difference between the poppy and the periwinkle, but I can't necessarily tell between the mayapple and the periwinkle. But just for future reference, whenever I see the more round but less petals, remember that that's poppy. Okay. I will try to remember. Nine of Cups. Again, a crystallographic image. It feels very it doesn't seem to be like mentioning, like there are reversed meanings in the guidebook, and the reversed meanings will kind of express something different even in the images that to me look like it would be the same image either way, so you would view it the same either way. That's just my personal way of viewing whether or not, because a few of the cards in the cups look like they have a built-in reversal, and several of them like this look like they would be the same interpretation either way based on the imagery, but that is just me putting that onto the imagery. That is not how the guidebook, because the guidebook does have reversals. Just so you guys know, I'm just not reading them. Key symbol, Peruvian lily and coins. This card stands for self-satisfaction, good fortune, and contentment. One finds joy in what one has and finds it abundant. Ooh, I like that. One finds joy in what one has and finds it abundant. All of your dreams have come true. You don't need anything else. That's me saying that part. The coins springing from each skull. The Peruvian lilies express warmth and goodwill. So this is obvious to me. These are lilies. This is a different flower than the other flowers. I think it also might be harder for me to tell the difference between these different flowers because of the fact that this is a 3-color deck. You know, so you're not getting the cues of like, oh, this is this flower because it's this color kind of thing. Key symbols in the Ten of Cups, Marigold, Hangman's Knot, and Third Eye. Completion, peace, self-awareness, and family. So again, like we're seeing an image that is the same reversed as it is upright. The Ten of Cups is just beauty and abundance and peace and family, no matter how you slice it. And the addition of the Hangman's Knot, to me, says, you know, you can feel really trapped and choked by your family, but there's also all this abundance as well. It just says, marigolds grow uninhibited and suggest a complete understanding of the cycles life has to offer, birth, death, and enlightenment. It doesn't really say anything about the Hangman's Knot sort of being, and I can see that, especially with, I have had just so many experiences with Ten of Cups ever since, you know, pandemic. I was getting the Ten of Cups constantly at the beginning of the pandemic, and sort of this double-edged sword of we are all in this together. We are all one big collective, and that means that we're all in this together in a good sense and in a bad sense as well, you know? I like that. Page of Cups. Orange blossoms and orange fruit represent a skull, represented by a skull overflowing with oranges and orange blossoms. This card concerns itself with budding relationships, blah, blah, blah. Oranges and their blossoms are bright, cheerful, fragrant, and youthful. It implies that inspiration is on the upswing, blah, blah. I'm just kind of scanning to see. Yeah, no gendered language in this page either. And I think if you imagine what oranges smell like, it's just a very fresh, new, like, that does evoke kind of a page energy for me. This is sort of a multi-senses kind of, this is one of my favorite Knight of Cups ever in the history of the universe. My Michael is a Knight of Cups, and I think right when I first got this deck, I was looking through it and he was kind of looking at it with me or something, and I can't remember if it was him that said this or me, or we just kind of said it at the same time or something. No, I think he did say it. He was looking at it and he was like, yeah, that's me. Even if I was only a skull, I'd find a way to still cry. And I thought, oh my god, how perfect is that? The Knight of Cups being just like an overflowing of emotion kind of figure, right? Okay, key symbols, bullhorn and overflowing tears. The Knight of Cups signifies romance, idealization, and being charmed. The same idealization can lead to over-emotional fantasies, grand gestures, and blowing the horn, only for one's intentions to pour over like tears. Yeah, okay. Okay. So I just see this as like, Knight of Cups. They find a way to cry even if they don't have tear ducts anymore. That's just how I view this card, and it makes me happy and laugh and not take life so seriously and all that good stuff. This one's very easy for me to interpret too, because this Queen of Cups she has a lotus, right? Lotus flower, yeah. Unconditional love. Queen blooms as the lotus flower does. Much like the flower rooted in the mud, she emerges from... So again, we have the same no gendered language in the Knight and Page, but gendered language in the Queen and King. King, he's got coins and some kind of citrus, mango blossoms, and mango. King of Cups stands for abundance, generosity, security, level-headedness, reliability, and tolerance. Mangoes and mango blossoms symbolize sweet, fruitful abundance. Oh my god, mango's my favorite fucking fruit. I've been obsessed lately with just like any type of mango. Mango in smoothies, dried mango, mango alcoholic drinks, like, artificial mango and real mango. All the mango. Love it. Okay, you ready for the swords, guys? Well, too bad. They're coming anyway. This one, again, I get a little confused because we have a rose in the swords, just like we did. And we have a rose in the Ace of Swords, just like we did with the Ace of... Oh, I put it over here. Just like we did with the Ace of Wands. But it's different in that... I kind of like reconcile this as with the wands being passion and goal setting and like moving confidently towards your future, and the Ace of Swords being a sword cutting through that idea. I can see like sometimes you overthink things. Sometimes the reason why you aren't achieving your goals is because your brain is stopping you from going as far as you could if you weren't overthinking things. Does that make sense? That's kind of how I reconcile this. That probably wasn't Omri Brar's intention with the Ace of Swords having that connotation, but that's kind of the weird way that my brain helps remind me when I see this card. Oh yeah, this is the Ace of Swords, not the Ace of Wands. I mean, obviously there's a sword here, but just in my mind, those images are similar enough that I get confused. The suit of swords is traditionally associated with the element of air and explores the realm of knowledge, communication, and comprehension. Conflict, anguish, suffering, and the subsequent quest for a resolution are all themes that the suit of swords seeks to examine. Ooh, I like that. Not like... the Suit of Swords deals with this. The Suit of Swords will answer these questions for you. Not that. The Suit of Swords seeks to examine these issues. Swords ask us to approach things with a mind that values logic and reason, imploring us to broaden our perspectives to consider new solutions. Key symbols. Impaled Rose. This card signifies breakthroughs, confronting facts and problems, actively working on solutions and seeking triumph. Sword pierces a rose effortlessly, symbolizing that while some issues may appear beautiful if problematic, they must be dealt with decisively. And also, if you do think of that sort of traditional symbolism of roses being secrets, an Ace of Swords the sword is going to pierce through that secret. It's going to uncover it. Two of Swords. At first glance, I really love this image, but I know what I'm about to read in the guidebook kind of contradicts how much I love it. Because, it's just two crossed swords with a moon in the background. It tells me everything that I need to see in a Two of Swords. So yeah, I don't really love this image. Or I love this image, but I don't really love the description in the guidebook. That said, I do still sort of need to, say it, right? Key symbols. Reversed handles and the moon. So, at first glance, I don't know enough about swords to see that these are reversed. But, sorry, I'm hearing pounding. I'm wondering if Michael is trapped somewhere. I'm gonna go make sure that's not the case. I'll be right back. Okay. Alright, so it is like, I don't know, a good 20 minutes later. That was like a whole situation. Without going any further into it, it was a whole dog situation. There was something to be cleaned up that was quite terrifying, like Exorcist levels of terrifying. But we got through it, and I'm back. Realizing, yeah, okay. Alright, being a pet parent. Some of you guys, a lot of you guys know what I'm talking about. Okay. I mean, luckily I'm very experienced in that. So, it wasn't quite as traumatizing for me. Poor Michael, like, he did not grow up with quite as many pets as me, and, like, he looked like a deer in headlights. He was trying not to interrupt me, but, like, because I could hear the, like, anyway. I'm in danger of going into details, so I will stop there. But I am back. Let's get back to this Two of Swords. This card, I don't know where I stopped, so I will just read the whole thing again. Key symbols, reversed handles, and the moon. This card concerns itself with denial, stalemate, and indecision. That is absolutely not how I see the Two of Swords. This is illustrated by the reversed handles on the swords, rendering them virtually unusable. This is the same method that is employed in the Two of Swords in the Santa Muerte Tarot. In fact, I have it right here. So let me just actually pull it out. I mean, this video is already 1,000 hours long, so what's like 30 more seconds while I find this card? Hey, it didn't take that long. So this is the Two of Swords from the Santa Muerte. Same thing, like we have like this pair of scissors with outturned blades. I like this image if I forget the sort of reverse blades thing, because that's, anyway, I mean, you guys, several of you have heard me talk about the Two of Swords at length, but I see it as a sacred boundaries card, as a way to block the outside world, block outside stimulus so that you can trust your own instincts. So I don't think it's a stalemate, I think it's a pause. That's just me. I mean, of course, depending on the reading, depending on the person, depending on how you might see it this way, and this might be a great interpretation for you. Either way, I still like this card. Three of Swords, very traditional looking. Anatomical heart. Key symbols, impaled heart, and reversed handles. Again, we have that reversed handles thing, which I don't necessarily notice when I'm just looking at the card, just because I'm not versed in weapons, apparently. But this card symbolizes heartbreak, betrayal, division, hard truths, and rejection. Again, I don't necessarily, sometimes hard truths can definitely be a part of Three of Swords, but I don't usually see it as a heartbreak card, which is one of the reasons why, like, some of the traditional RWS interpretations of tarot that I'm so used to, because I learned with that system, I'm excited to explore Marseille, because I feel like within that deck, I will be, that tarot system, I will be able to throw out a lot of the meanings that I don't necessarily like. I mean, I love the Three of Swords. I have this fucking tattoo, but it's because I've looked beyond the traditional meanings of it, and I can see the traditional Three of Swords depiction while not necessarily interpreting it that way. That was a really long-winded way to say what I was trying to say. I hope you understood. It's been a long day. And it's dinner time, I think, as well. But our lives were just sort of like pushed back half an hour because of that pet emergency. I hope he's okay. Poor baby. Anyway, but let me try to, I got like a little out of focus there. Let me focus back in on the task at hand. Hello, how are you? Key symbols, impaled heart, reversed handles. Okay. The heart is impaled by 3 swords, 2 of which have their handles reversed, a reference to how the indecisive nature of the 2 of swords can grow into something more destructive. Oh, I don't like that at all. But, fortunately, I will forget that I ever read it that way. And no offense to you, Henri Terrar, if by some chance you're watching this, you made one of the best decks that has ever existed. So just because I happen to disagree with some of your interpretations of the cards, it don't mean nothing. I still love your shit so much. So, which are the 2 with the reversed handles then? Because I don't see what's happening, I guess. They all look the same to me. Am I just dumb? I can't see which are the 2 that are reversed because they look the same to me? I don't know. Okay, 4 of Swords. This one I love. This one is sort of like, I mean, I still don't know enough about Marseille decks, but isn't this kind of what a Marseille for? I guess not, because Marseille swords are like bendy, aren't they? Anyway, this sort of like pointing inward, I think that's appropriate for any 4 card. But what we have here, key symbols are gardenia. This card represents solitude, reevaluation, and rest. Gardenia flower in the center symbolizes self-reflection and renewal. All 4 blades are pointed inward as if directing their attention to it. So, lovely. Lovely gal. 5 of Swords. The broken sword. I think that makes sense for a 5. You know, everything's kind of pointed any direction and one of them is broken. That sort of anxiety that's built into the 5s, you know, that kind of like things going in all directions. I get that with this. Key symbols, broken sword. This card symbolizes loss, dishonor, and defeat. The Khanda, double-edged sword in the middle of the composition, blaze broken. This is defeat even in the event of victory, as some triumphs can feel ill-won or hollow. Oh, sorry. Wouldn't be one of my videos if I didn't bump into the tripod at least once. It's probably been like 3 times in a video this long. This one I was thinking, this is another one of the ones I was thinking of last night. Like, how do I reconcile the symbolism in the 6 of Swords? It took me a while to fall asleep last night, so I got through like almost the whole deck in my mind, despite the ones that I couldn't recall. But, and I suddenly got it. Okay, so in the traditional 6 of Swords, you're seeing like someone taking someone else in a boat to calmer waters. So it's kind of, there's a hierarchy built into the 6s in the RWS system that every 6 has like someone helping someone else. There's a balance being enacted through a hierarchy of someone with more resources sharing with someone with less. So with the 6 of Swords, I've always seen it as like a very healing card. I won't go into my full explanation of the 6 of Swords because I've done that so many times, but essentially seeing that there's like the person taking the family in the boat across to calmer waters. That person is the one with more resources at the moment. That person is helping the other people in the boat that are kind of downtrodden by whatever they've gone through. So when you see like this bigger weapon here with the little baby attached to it, you can kind of get that a little bit. This sword is cutting through something and it's taking this little guy with it. This little guy that can't cut for himself right now. So let's see what the guidebook says. Key symbols, machete. I'm probably, for some reason, like thinking about that word, I can't think of how you're supposed to say it. Machete. That's like the American sounding, like it's not machete, is it? But I'm just going to say machete because that comes out like more naturally for me. And Marigold, so I was just calling it a knife, but that's a machete. This card stands for travel and inner journeys, growth and evolution after difficult times. The machete is a utility-based practical blade and suggests a personality that will adapt to new situations. I like that. 7 of Swords. This one's hard. I mean, you got like these little switchblade looking motherfuckers over here, and then these really long blade knives. It'll probably say what they are, but I'm not versed in weaponry, as I think I said before. Okay, key symbols: card dagger and Nerium oleander. So that's this, but again, to me that looks like the Mayapples and the periwinkles that we saw before. I'm not going to bother trying to find them to compare because I'm going to think they look the same, because my brain is just not sophisticated enough to see the difference. I'm sure that's on me and not on Henri Brar. This card represents thievery, lies, betrayal, and avoiding the truth. The thin blades of the card dagger make it useful for stabbing and little else. That's got to be these, right? Or maybe it's these. The thin blades. I mean, they're... Yeah, okay. Yeah, you couldn't do anything else with those except stab. And are these just a variation of those? I don't know. Nerium oleander, meanwhile, is a highly poisonous plant despite its deceptively beautiful appearance. Okay. I like that. If I can remember that this is a poisonous plant, because it's too much to think that I will actually remember that this is Nerium oleander. But if I can remember that this is a poisonous plant, that though it is beautiful, it will actually harm you, that is a good way to tie it into the meaning of Seven of Swords. Eight of Swords. Key symbols: tooth, sisu leaves, and kadam leaves. Sorry, I'm like kind of stopped like looking at the imagery and deciding how I feel about it before I read. Let me try to go back to that. Let me try to refocus. Still haven't totally gotten there. I now have my cat pawing under the door. She's like, but now I want attention. So all of these blades are pointed inward towards the tooth. Eight of Swords. I mean, tooth is mouth, is communication, right? So maybe you could see this as, I mean, obviously you got every blade pointing inward, so you can easily see that entrapment feeling that you get with the Eight of Swords traditionally, but you could also see it as a blockage in communication because of the fact that the tooth is the symbol that's in the middle. Let's see what the guidebook says. This card can signify bad news, powerlessness, loneliness, and self-sabotage. The tooth symbolizes the mouth and the words that come from it. Like, I know I've read this guidebook before, but I still feel like it's happening for the first time because of my terrible memory, so I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I said. The daggers facing inward suggests it is something of a negative nature. The sisu and kadam leaves represent attempted healing. Okay. I like them being there. If I could just remember that these are healing plants. So it's like you get the juxtaposition of the blades pointed inward and the healing. So like you're trying to heal, but you haven't actually removed the blades, so you can't heal. Oh, that's awesome, actually. I like that. That is a good Eight of Swords. See, I've like had this deck for 2.5 years. Again, this is a similar concept. I do remember the guidebook definition for this one is that, you know, we have the jawbone, which again is symbolizing communication. So instead of like sort of the traditional interpretation of Nine of Swords being like sleeplessness and shit like that, in this deck it's more about your anxiety is causing you to miscommunicate. All the swords pointed at you means a blockage in communication, I think is what the guidebook is going to say. And I kind of like that a little bit. I mean, I'd like any variation in the traditional Nine of Swords imagery that you see in RWS decks. I like that this is different. Key symbol, jawbone. This card symbolizes guilt, deception, despair, anxiety, and lies. The jawbone alone, and I get it, I get lies, because the Nine of Swords traditional interpretation is that you're lying to yourself. Your anxiety, your brain is lying to you because you are anxious about things that do not exist in the light of day. If you're looking at the traditional interpretation of Nine of Swords, which I always say it like that because I still don't totally know how I see the Nine of Swords, so I don't feel comfortable with the traditional meaning, but okay. Anyway, this is not about how I feel about every single card in the whole universe, although it's long enough that could be what this is. You guys, I'm delirious at this point. Okay. Jawbone alone under the daggers and flanked by the sword suggests that words may be the root of one's despair, whether they are those that were said or those that were heard. Self-confrontation and self-inventory must be carried out with honesty. I really like this. I don't know if it's my interpretation of Nine of Swords, but the thing about having different decks is that sometimes you can divorce yourself from your own personal interpretations of the cards. You can divorce yourself from other decks' interpretations of the cards. And if I pull the Nine of Swords when I have this deck, it is a different meaning than anywhere else, you know? And that's cool. Like sometimes I can't handle the deviation because I have to be grounded in something I know with tarot. But when it hits the sweet spot for me of this is a card I don't totally know how I feel about anyway, that I feel like I'm still really learning in the tarot. So when I see a different interpretation of it, I can roll with it because I don't have something set in my mind for how I want it to be. And that's kind of what the Nine of Swords is about, though, isn't it? You haven't fully wrapped your head around something. You're still trying to work it out, and that's why it's keeping you up at night. Holy shit. Maybe that's the Nine of Swords. You're trying to work something out. It's an idea that you're turning over and over in your head, and it's keeping you up at night because you're trying to work it out. It's not just anxiety keeping you awake. It's the anxiety married with the fact that you have something you're trying to work out. Whatever that may be. Okay. I was just thinking, I should write that down. Oh yeah, I'm recording, so it's effectively written down. Done. This is why I do this shit, guys. Very traditional interpretation of the Ten of Swords, right? That's very recognizable as a Ten of Swords. You even have a couple of little droplets of blood down here onto this last sword. Key symbol, Impaled Skull. This card concerns itself with matters of suffering, betrayal, and desolation. Pain has reached, or is reaching, an apex, and a resolution will soon be found. The skull is impaled in every possible direction, heavy with gold, and can be torn asunder at any moment, arriving at a precipice and needing a new starting point. Sorry, I just read that whole thing. I'm trying to, not read the whole thing. So we go back to that, when we were talking about the rib cage. This is an interesting Page of Swords because it's decapitated and we have a sword. But we have all of these. Again, we have a reconciliation between the page and the ace in this suit, just like we saw with the page and the ace in the wands, because you see, again, the roses like you did with the ace. So now, whereas here we had epiphany, we had sword piercing the secretive nature of the rose, and here the roses have taken over, but there's a divinity in it. Even though the roses have taken over, it's almost like we've ascended to not needing to know the truth, is what I'm getting from this just intuitively. Here, we need to know the truth. We've pierced the secret. We're ready to uncover the truth. But by the time we get to the end of the Suit of Swords, it's you know what? That's like when you realize, when you're trying to seek knowledge, when you realize you just don't know anything. With age comes experience, but with age also comes the ability to admit that you really don't know anything. Whereas when you're younger, you think you know everything. I mean, obviously here we're getting the page, so maybe I'm just going off on a tangent at this point and totally ignore me. But yeah, hold on. I'm going to get a drink. I take a deep breath. Can you guys hear my belly rumbling? Okay. Page of Swords. Key symbols, roses and a headless figure. So the Page of Swords lacks a head, their insides entwined with a rose bush and a single dagger hanging over the vertebra that compose their neck. This card concerns itself with vigilance, contemplation, thought, and the growth of new ideas. So yeah, proliferation of ideas being the whole fucking rose bush is inside you. Kind of like that. However, these very ideas may lead to the head quite literally leaving the body in order to pursue the page's desire for an intellectual challenge. I forgot about that interpretation. Like, she still has, she has her little halo, but because she doesn't have a head, the halo is tiny because it's just right there. That sort of, I'm reminded of a Tool lyric, overthinking, overanalyzing separates the body from the mind. That is the lyrical phrase to represent this particular Page of Swords. Still the knife hangs over them, a reminder that caution is of the utmost importance. Okay, so we're still getting, at this point, I think it's safe to say that the pages and knights in this deck do not have gendered language in the guidebook, but I will keep paying attention just in case that's not the case. Knight of Swords. Snapdragons are the symbol. I mean, he just looks like he's cutting through the grasses, like Link, you know. The Knight of Swords is considered the intellectual, defensive, skilled, brave, and wrathful. Likewise, snapdragons are also associated with duality, simultaneously linked with graciousness and deceptiveness. He can be tactless, casting aspirations, setting goals, and making statements without thinking twice about how appropriate they may or may not be. Yeah. I mean, that is the Knight of Swords, right? Rushing in to save you, but also not necessarily thinking first before acting. I mean, snapdragons. Where are snapdragons? This just looks like... It looks like those amla branches to me. But again, it's just because I am not refined in the art of botanical shit. Queen of Swords. Care branches. Queen of Swords stands poised and ready to strike if necessary. She is decisive, if mournful, in her pursuits and execution. This card symbolizes perceptiveness, sadness, and honesty in the face of all decisions, especially difficult ones. The extract taken from care trees is considered healing but very bitter, much like the act of confronting necessary and painful truths. So again, I'm not recognizing what here is care branches. I guess they are like much more fine leaves. They're much more fern-like than the amla branches. Is that right? Am I saying the wrong word? Yeah, amla branches. Okay. So yeah, I can see that that's something different, but that's good to remember too, that this is a healing herb, but it's very bitter. Healing but bitter. That is very much Queen of Swords. It's like that brash truth. It can really taste bitter, but it's the truth, and facing it will lead to healing. Okay. All right. Come through, Amrit. King of Swords. So we're looking at what? Periwinkles again? I don't know. Pansies. See, we've never even seen pansies yet. Oh my god, all these flowers are looking the same. Key symbols, pansies and time. King of Swords sits at rest, his sword braced before him. Unlike the dynamic gestures of the knight and queen, he represents authority, integrity, connections, intellect, and fortitude. So again, like, in general, the kings and the emperor are at rest. They're not the active warriors of the tarot. They are holding the line. They are not actively... They're not active. They have been active. They know what that's like. And now they're chilling. Which is why, like, I don't necessarily want to think of king as masculine. King is just the oldest of the court cards. King is the most experienced of the court cards. He represents authority. Okay, I already said that. Time alongside him stands for power. Pansies for remembrance. He is a commanding presence that demands respect. So pansies are for remembrance. And time is for power? Okay. Let's go. Let's go. Haven't we been going? Let's talk about the rings suit. And hopefully I won't go entirely mad by the end of this. Hopefully you haven't either. I can see, like, you probably have taken many breaks. It's possibly even taken you days or weeks to get through this fucking video. If you're still here as we start the rings, I'm in love with you. That's my confession. Thank you for being here. I really, really, really hope that, like, this series is able to bring something to someone, because it's going to be a lot of work. I mean, if I do this 28 times for each and every one of my decks, I mean, it's probably going to take me a year at least, but it's going to be a lot. Please only watch for the decks that you're interested in. Okay, I'm delirious. Okay, rings. The suit of rings, otherwise known as discs, coins, or pentacles, is traditionally associated with the element of earth. It navigates earthly matters and concerns such as money, physical or financial security, material wealth, and the home. In this deck, the suit is represented by physical rings and hands rendered in flesh instead of bone, with the exception of the court cards. Okay, Ace of Rings. So, this Minor Arcana suit is my favorite in this deck. The rings, I find the hands, the juxtaposition of hands when you've seen skeletons throughout the whole deck, especially when you're looking at a reading, it's immediately evident that this is different. This is physical reality, material reality. This is the Pentacles. It's different. And it's so beautiful. Like, I love all the skeleton figures too, but just finally seeing, and it's also just, I have an obsession with hands. I don't know what it is, but I was thinking last night, I would probably be okay with a deck that was just a tarot deck filled with hands, like maybe mudras, different hand postures. Like, it might get a little repetitive to see an entire deck like that, but seeing it in a whole suit of the Minor Arcana is breathtaking, and I love it. Okay, let's get into it. And there's a ring. They're numerologically represented, of course, just like all the other suits. But here the ring is a halo, which is so smart for the ace, right? Key symbols: eye and wood anemone. So that's what we're seeing here with these white branches are wood anemone, and I think we will see that repeated several times in the ring suit too, even though we haven't seen wood anemone yet before. This card symbolizes wealth, prosperity, and contentment. The eye suggests vision and the presence of spiritual wealth alongside physical wealth. The wood anemone is a flower often associated with protection, adaptation, and a bright future. So it's just like all the beautiful things showing up here. And it doesn't even say what type of flower this one is. Again, we have that psychic eye, and the rings here are bracelets. Key symbols: eye, gold cara, and joined hands. This card represents balance, adaptability, and problem solving. The hands hold one another, finding resolutions with confidence in oneself. The bracelets around their wrists behave as the cara does, a symbol of the eternal and cyclical nature of the divine. So I guess the cara is, to me this almost looks like stinging nettle, but it's not. Gorgeous. Key symbol: poppy. This card concerns itself with cooperation, skilled labor, and completing projects. The rings behave as a lens from which the poppy, a symbol of both success and sloth, can be observed. If focus is applied, triumph will follow. Like, poppy has been used for many you know, again, it's like beneficial medicine, but it can be used to also control and make the masses dependent, right? It's the soma of the masses or whatever. Opiate of the masses. I mean, literally opiate, but again, all the 4s in this deck have like a reaching inward quality to them. And here we also see like a sword tattoo, an eye tattoo, and there's a ring on each of the 4 fingers, so it's balanced and stable. Key symbols: eye, sword, and full moon. Gorgeous. That's the biggest moon in this deck, right? I think it's even bigger than the moon. Let us see. Yeah, it is. It's way bigger than the moon. Gorgeous. So beautiful. I think the suit of rings employs white more than every other suit, because the only gold that you have in the rings, maybe that's not true of every ring card, but I think it is. The only gold that you have in the rings is for the rings themselves, which makes it even more powerful, I think. This card symbolizes greed, possessiveness, and unkindness of spirit. Okay, well, that's not how I see it, but okay. Hands reach for one another. Over the moon, a symbol of the illusions and dreams of this world. The sword suggests suffering. Vision granted by the eye on the palm will easily be obscured by a closed fist. I like that. I think that's my favorite part of the symbolism, that, like, you know, you can obscure that knowledge, that awareness, by just closing your hand. And I think that makes sense as a 4 of Pentacles. I don't necessarily see greed in the 4 of Pentacles usually. I mean, it depends, of course, always. This one I do remember the guidebook. This is Stinging Nettle and probably Wood Anemone again. And obviously the 5 rings are on her hands, on her hand, or their hand. And you also have the ring around the hand, again with that divinity, symbol of divinities in almost every card in the whole deck. But the idea here is that if you try to pull your hand out of the stinging nettles, it's going to hurt. So that, like, that sort of like pain of the 5s is definitely built into this card. Key symbols: eye and stinging nettles. This card represents financial and material struggles, troubles, victim mentalities, and rejection. Victim mentality big time with the 5 of Pentacles, right? Hand finds itself surrounded by stinging nettles, pained by unfavorable circumstances. The eye in proximity to the nettle suggests understanding that one's strife is self-inflicted. So you've put yourself here. 6 of Rings. You do sort of get that sense of help. Like, it's not necessarily that, I mean, these 2 hands are probably from the same body, but they're providing stability together. Providing stability and balance together. Knife and eye are the key symbols. This card symbolizes generosity, prosperity, gratification, reflection, and loss versus gain. The hands wield a short knife, utilitarian or dangerous in the right circumstances. The eye suggests understanding the material world and considering both the harmful and helpful facets of it. Seven of Rings. And we have a double divinity ring in this too, white and gold. But it's not one of the rings because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we are seeing some 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Well, this one, the 6th ring was the background ring. This is, I think this is the first one that we're seeing gold represented in the image that isn't one of the rings. Key symbols: cardamom plant and gesturing upwards. This card represents reflecting on finances, social standing, business, and the fruits of one's labor. The gesture upward suggests reflection, and the spices derived from the cardamom and its seeds can be notoriously hard to cultivate. Oh God, how beautiful. Just all these cards are breathtaking to me. And the gesture here, for some reason, it makes sense to me. I don't know why, I can't even articulate it, but 8 of Pentacles with that hand gesture, it makes sense to me. Let's see what the guidebook says. Key symbols, crossed fingers, and wood anemone. This card symbolizes craft, diligence, dedication, and skill. The wood anemone, a symbol of adaptation, emphasizes the need to commit to one's craft in order to achieve results in projects, finances, and life. It's hard for me to see a wood anemone here because wasn't that... I guess that wasn't what the branches were. This is wood anemone. No? Yeah? This is wood anemone? I thought it was the branches, but the branches might just be like on the branches again. Forgive me, guys. Please don't listen to like me thinking I know anything about plants because apparently I do not. 9 of Rings. Key symbol, rose and successively larger rings. Successively, not successfully. This card represents success, discipline, enjoyment, and safety. A rose blooms within the largest ring, symbolizing expanding one's perspectives to see the bigger picture. Not just petals, not thorns, not leaves, and focusing on what one finds wonderful. Okay, what? Symbolizing expanding one's perspective to see the bigger picture, not just... Okay. Not just one thing. The whole thing. The whole thorned rose. All of it. Okay. All right. I mean, I think this image is beautiful. Oh, look at this. I love this. This gesture of just like the reaching up, the offering, the accepting, the balance, the harmony. I love it. Key symbols, rings in rotation. This card symbolizes juggling family affairs and financial matters as well as a desire for tradition and affluence. The many gold rings rotate in bright abundance. Do they ever? Page of Rings. Key symbols, ring hovering in hand and neem leaves. Page of Rings represents reflection, contemplation, learning, practical goals, and connection to reality. The page observes a ring carefully, almost in reverence, which I love about the Page of Pentacles in general. Like, aren't we always seeing a reverence? I think it should be implied anyway. And this, she has a ring behind her and on her head, and she's holding one. Like, she is very... She's got all... She's amazing. She's amazing. Wait till you see the bling on the queen. Okay, but she's amazing. I'm putting gender into it when the gender is not in it. They are amazing. They are amazing. This card concerns itself with new projects, taking tasks in hand, and finding... Ooh, I never thought of it that way. Of course, the Page of Pentacles is taking tasks in hand. They are holding material reality in their hand in the form of the pentacle or the ring or the coin or whatever. Neem leaves surround our page. The neem tree's many widespread uses in cosmetics, food, and medicine are a nod to the practicality of the Page of Rings. So neem is multi-purpose plant. Knight. Key symbols, ring as chakram and neem leaves. Chakram. The Knight of Rings wields his ring in his hand. Oh. Okay, this is the only knight or page with gendered language. This is a card of duality, much like the other knights, representing the extremes of his station. He symbolizes hard work, dedication, and responsibility. I wonder if that was just an oversight, since all the others, it seems like there was no gender in any of the other knights or pages. So that was probably just an accident, I would assume. The chakram in his hand is a weapon that can save or harm. The neem leaves in the background symbolize the many practical uses of the plant. So again, we see those neem leaves. And I can see that that is different than the other branches that we've seen, like the amla branches or the wood anemone or whatever. That one that was... Oh, I forgot. what was the one that was in the Queen of Swords? Care branches. I can see that this is different. The neem leaves, I'm like, good job, Mixtress. You saw some difference in a plant. Jesus. The neem leaves in the background symbolize the many practical uses of the plant. I already said that, as well as the threat of potential poisoning if its oil is consumed in excess. So a warning of excess in the Knight of Rings. It doesn't really make sense to me at the moment, but that doesn't mean anything because I'm a little slap happy at this point. Queen of Rings, look at the bling on her. Yes. She is definitely the most decorated in this entire deck. Key symbols, ring overhead and neem leaves. Again, are the neem leaves in all? Yeah, they are. They're in all 4 of the court cards of Rings. That's cool. The Queen of Rings exemplifies intelligence, trustworthiness, security, generosity, and resourcefulness. She holds a ring overhead and turns her gaze upward, contemplating the greater world past the trappings of gold and heavily adorned clothing. This is a card of nurturing, support, and responsibility. The presence of neem, in the case of the Queen of Rings, refers to the plant's protective and restorative properties. So just the versatility of the neem plant is being shown for different reasons and different court cards in the ring suit. I like that. That's interesting. I won't necessarily remember it, but this is also like this video series I was thinking earlier, like it could serve as a reminder for me because I have such a terrible memory. I could just be sitting down thinking to myself one day, I'd love to remember what the Marigold Tarot is all about. Let's watch my long ass video about it. Oh my god, is this video like 3 hours long at this point? Because I have been recording for almost 3 hours. I mean, there have been interruptions, but I have no idea how long it is at this point because I've had to start several different videos. Last card, guys. King of Rings. He looks very secure in himself, doesn't he? We have the neem plants, neem ring leaves, and ring as halo. The King of Rings symbolizes power, knowledge, success, and reliability. In a fashion, one could suggest that everything he touches turns to gold. His ring halos his head, indicating that he is rich in practical knowledge. His keen instincts, cooperative nature, and business sense are his greatest assets. The neem leaves surrounding the King of Rings refer to the sheer abundance and potential present within him. Beautiful. Beautiful. Let me see if there's anything I missed in the back as far as like other symbolism. We talked about the flesh, the cage, the circle, lovers, and tether. Yep, we got this. I basically just read this entire book to you guys, with the exception of like skipping over a little bit of like the basic meanings of the cards and stuff. But there you go. That is a super deep ass dive into Marigold Tarot. Please comment below with your suggestions for what I should call this series. Should I call it a deep ass dive into whatever? Is there something else that sounds super clever that I should use? I mean, since this is the most thorough review of Marigold Tarot ever on the internet, hopefully, I guess I should just briefly mention this is also the best cardstock of all time. It's linen, it's flexible, it is so fun to shuffle. I love it. I love this deck so much. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one.